Okay, we are now live, and so I'm Tristan Toleno, state representative from Brattleboro, Vermont, and also the chair of the Windham County Democrats. As of Monday night, I'm here with Mike Mrowicki.
Hi, I'm Mike Mrowicki.
So I'm Tristan Toleno, state representative. Sorry, hold on a second.
Okay.
I had this on, not on mute. Apologize. Okay, there we go.
And hi, I'm Mike Mrowicki. I'm the state representative for the Windham 4 district, and that's Putney, Dummerston, and Westminster, what I like to call the heart of the Southeast Kingdom.
And that's right. And we are in a nameless, nondescript small meeting room in the Vermont State House. And remotely coming into us is our special guest this afternoon. And I'm going to try really hard to get the pronunciation right, but I have to tell you that I have had 3 different people over the time plant the wrong pronunciation in my head. So, so is it Faisal like Castle?
That's it. That's it.
All right.
That's it. Faisal Gill. Yep.
Faisal Gill. Okay. So sometimes I sound like I'm trying to be all hoity-toity and British with it, and I apologize. And you know, random things just come like popping out of my brain when I get planted wrong. So thank you for agreeing to join us. It looks like there are at least a couple people who may have joined us, and hopefully the live chat feature will work if they do have questions. Why don't you do a quick introduction of yourself? What I'll do is I'll mute us in the background while you're talking, and then when we're ready to ask questions, we can. And then if any questions come in on the live chat, we can do that as well. So, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us what you're running for and why, and we'll be here listening to you.
Okay. So my name is Faisal Gill, and as I think most of you all know, that I'm running for state party chair of Vermont Democratic Party. I've been in Vermont for, I guess now about 5 years. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Pakistan. I moved here with my parents when I was 8 years old and settled outside of the DC area in Northern Virginia. Went to school there, went to college there. You know, my dad, I say this all the time, I'm very proud of it. My father was a cab driver, drove a taxi cab in DC. You know, I grew up in a very immigrant neighborhood. And then was the first person in my family to go to college. And when I ran for the Senate this past time, the big issue that I ran on was free college, because just from my own personal view, personal family history, the way to break the cycle of poverty is through higher education. And you know, when I said when I ran, I opened up my speech by saying, you know, I stand before you as an immigrant who was a former Republican. I grew up a son of a cab driver at the barely graduated high school with a 1.7 GPA. At the age of 18, or actually, yeah, at the age of 18, I got my then girlfriend pregnant. Or sorry, actually 17. So at the age of 18, I had my first child. You know, I was about to be a statistic if it wasn't for college and then, you know, working through all that. Luckily, turned my life around, went to college, became a lawyer, joined the Navy. That was the first time that I ever had medical insurance in my life growing up. Never knew what it was until I joined the Navy. And after that, you know, I've got 2 other kids now. Fortunately, my son, who was born to me at the age of 18, you know, went on to go to college himself. He's graduated from UCLA, and now I guess we've come full circle because now he's trying to find himself. So we'll see. sometimes a generation goes around a little bit too much, I think. But I've got 2 other kids, you know, from Virginia. I went to California, and then I've been here for about 5 years. I'm just going to dive in, and I know people have, this is the question that they've got, so I'll answer it ahead of time. Yeah, I used to be a Republican. I was a Republican. I ran as a Republican in Virginia. I did work for President Bush, and you know, I'm a Muslim American. After 9/11, a lot of the Muslim community was very concerned about what's going to happen to us. One of the things that they said, they wanted to get Muslims in the government, and with my resume of being in the military, being in the Navy, being a lawyer, growing up here, they thought that I would be a good candidate. And you know, I applied, and I did. And I was a lawyer in the Office of Homeland Security, and then I worked for the Department of Homeland Security. And I think from a Muslim perspective, it was good because I was one of the voices there that urged the president to go to a mosque after 9/11, urged Attorney General Ashcroft to go to a mosque and to make sure that the language was, this is not a war against Islam, this is a war against people who, you know, just don't want to do the criminals, basically terrorists. After that, I ran for office, mainly growing up the, you know, son of a cab driver. We always felt that the Republican Party was the party that wanted to give the little guy the opportunity to succeed, have a small business go up. Rest of my uncles are small businessmen. They own gas stations and restaurants. So from them, I kind of found the Republican Party, thought that they cared about that. Realized that they did not care about that. I think what was really interesting thing for me was when the Wall Street crisis occurred, that they wanted to bail out the banks, but didn't want to bail out the homeowners, who all their, you know, issue was they just wanted to give their family a better life and you know, have a house in a better neighborhood and all. So from there on, I just kind of turned against the Republican philosophy, as well as, and I've said this in the past, some papers have covered it, some have not, that Republican Party is just not welcoming the minorities. I mean, they are a party that they talk a good line, but in practice, they don't practice what they preach. So I left the Republican Party, and for the last 10 years, I've been a Democrat. And I think that actually gives me, the fact that I was a Republican gives me a little bit of an advantage, in the sense that the people that we're really trying to convince, that we're going after, are the folks in the middle who right now think that, you know, either Donald Trump or the Republican Party does stand for the little guy, and if, you know, they're down in jobs, they need assistance, that they that's the party to go to. And, you know, I think I'm a good person to basically say, no, they're not. they say a good line, but our philosophy is the one, the Democratic philosophy is the one that's going to, you know, get you jobs, good paying jobs as well. So I know I've talked a lot, but I wanted to just get out what I believe.
I think Mike has a question for you.
Yes, Mike.
Faisal, I appreciate you taking the time here. And many of us have come to Vermont from other places, like me. And one of the attractions are those Vermont values. We value community, family, equality, and especially our work is centered around justice, racial and social justice, economic justice, environmental justice. Can you share a little bit about those values that you bring to the party?
Absolutely. I mean, as far as racial justice, racial justice, I've been working on social issues since 2001, before that time. Whether it's, you know, working in the Muslim community of folks who have been jailed, who have been accused of being terrorists when they were not, who have been discriminated against from various reasons because they are Muslims, Muslims whose security clearances have been taken away, folks who have been given a hard time by coming to the United States, their visas. I've been working on those issues since before it was vogue to do that, basically. You know, right now, I'm very glad that all, you know, all the folks right now, attorney generals and everybody, state attorney generals, are taking up this cause and defending Muslims. But you know, I would urge people to look at this thing called NCERS, which from 2001 till 2011 existed, which stated that all Muslim men from the age of 18 to 35 who are legally in the United States, had to register with immigration and had to state where they are, where they're living. Now, that's discrimination based on gender, that's discrimination based on national origin, and that's discrimination based on religion. And that policy existed in the United States since 2001 to 2011. I was working on that. As far as economic justice goes, I firmly believe that the way to end poverty is to have free college. I mean, when I ran in the Senate, that was my #1 issue. I mean, in fact, people had to tell me that I had to talk about other issues and I couldn't just talk about that. You know, as I said, I know for firsthand experience, you know, I was a statistic, as I said. I mean, my parents weren't wealthy at all. I mean, in fact, the opposite direction. You know, I was, both of them worked. Nobody was home when I came home. Thank God child services wasn't that good back then, because my brother and I would be home alone at the age of 8 or 9. You know, I was a 9-year-old watching my 7-year-old brother. It's not, you know, that wouldn't be allowed today, but my parents worked and couldn't afford childcare. So I know that the way to break the cycle of poverty is through higher education. And I was determined that my kids would not have the same life that I did.
So I have a question. I'll shift it to the race
Sure.
you're in and what the role that you're seeking tomorrow from well, this party role. And I just say for viewers who may or may not know this, that the way that the party is structured is that there are town committees. The town committees elect representatives to their county committees. County committees send a couple of members to the state committee, and the state committee, and there are a few appointees as well, but the 40 or so people that make up the state committee choose a chair for the state committee. And I think that there's, because of, I think maybe you can comment on this, but I think because of some of the dynamics in the presidential election, and then most recently with Keith Ellison and Tom Perez, and the way that story was told, I think there's a sense that that this is a very hierarchical system in Vermont as well as at the national level. And my own experience is that there's a pretty big difference between the national DNC and the Vermont Democratic Party. But you are running to be chair of the Vermont Democratic Party, and I think people would like to hear your understanding of what that role is, what you think the opportunities are, and then also if you could comment on how that, in your understanding, how that connects to some of the larger challenges that we've had with perhaps with establishment power being used elsewhere.
Well, as I said, this is the first time in my life, I think, that I've been regarded as an establishment candidate. I mean, just from, no Muslim in America right now is establishment anything, basically. I will say that. I am running to be Vermont State Chair, and, there's a huge difference between the National Party and the Vermont Democratic Party. I mean, the Vermont Democratic Party, as you guys know, we're always begging people, looking for people to run for state committee offices, and nobody really does. I mean, it's basically all the town committees. None of the town committees, none of the county committees have their full complement of people that they're supposed to have. In Chittenden, we're supposed to have hundreds, and we barely do. In Winooski, the town that I live in, can send 11 people to more than 11 people to the county committee, and we don't. And Burlington doesn't. No other, in Windham, no town or county sends their full complement. So there's plenty of opportunity for people to get involved in this process, and plenty of opportunity to folks to run for the state committee, so then they can vote on the state chair. So there's no shortage of opportunities. Now, what I want to do, and I've talked about this a while, is I want to have the state committees have a better connection with the county committees. I really think the grassroots effort is at the county committee level. In Chittenden, what we need in Chittenden, the issues that are in Chittenden are very different than the issues that are in Windham. I'm not going to sit there and tell Windham, hey, these are your issues, and these are the kind of candidates you need to have, and this is how you should organize. What we need to do is we need to empower the Windham County Committee to say, okay, we want to organize, we want to attract more folks. How do we do that? What resources do you need from the state party? Whether those resources be money, whether those resources be lists, staff, whatever, the right message. That is what I want to do. That's the number one key component of my race. The other thing I want to do is, on the state committee, it calls for subcommittees. We need to have a messaging subcommittee, an outreach subcommittee. I think there's 3 other subcommittees. I want to form all of those. I want to make it to where people come to the state committees and it's worthwhile. There's a reason to come to the state committees. You're actually involved. I don't want to get into this to where the executive committee or VDP or the chair is running everything. I want to be more inclusive, get as many people involved in the decision-making process. I've said this from a personal level. A lot of times when I go to the state committee meetings, it feels like that we're just getting briefs and we're not involved in the decision-making. And I want to change that. And I said that in January, and I'll say that again now. That's what I want to do. I mean, I want to get really down in the nitty-gritty, in the weeds, and make sure that every town is organized, make sure that every town has the resources that it needs to attract people. And I do want to attract more, I want to bring diversity to the state committee. I mean, I think in January, Sue Minter was there, and she said, we want diversity in the state committee, and everybody looked around, and I was the only person of color there, sitting there. And I said, well, that's great, but I want to bring more diversity. And not just diversity from, a racial or ethnic standpoint. I want to attract more women. I want to bring more ethnic diversity, more age diversity, bring more folks that are younger, but get them to be involved in the party, involved in the system.
I had a question. I saw a letter that you sent out in response to some questions that I can't remember exactly who it went to, but Mike was facilitating some communication, and in it you mentioned that Keith Ellison had endorsed you race, and that some of the conversations that I've been a part of this week, where people were reacting to both the loss of Keith Ellison and their own interpretation of you, I thought might be surprised to know that he endorsed you, that he recognized you as somebody worth of his endorsement out of state and out of context. So if you could speak to that.
Yeah, no, and as I said, I was very disappointed that Keith lost the DNC chair. I really think he's the person that we needed. But yeah, Keith Ellison has known me for over 10 years, and Keith Ellison knows, how passionate I am about social issues and about civil rights and social justice and economic justice. And so when I ran for the Senate, I reached out to him and he said, absolutely, I'll endorse you. I think you'd be a great candidate. But it wasn't as if it was automatic. I mean, he grilled me on the issues as well. And he said, where do you stand? What are you running for? Where do you stand on union issues, labor issues? Where do you stand on, the college? And I sent him all the issues that I stood on, and only then that he endorsed me. But yeah, no, that's why I'm a little bit surprised when people are saying, well, this person is Republican from Virginia. I'm not asking anybody to take my word for anything. I have a 10-year record of doing stuff, of being involved in issues. And, this is not, and Tristan, as you know, and Mike, as you know, it's not that all of a sudden I switched just to become chair of the Vermont Democratic Party. I mean, as great of an honor as that's going to be, I mean, this is not something where you go, there's no pay here, there's no real exalted things here. In fact, you're actually spending your time away from work, you're spending your money, you're spending your resources, and you're dealing with some party folks who sometimes get to be a little bit challenging on various issues and playing referee a lot of times. So, this is not something that I'm just doing, that I just woke up one morning and said, hey, I think the best way for me to switch being Republican is to go be chair of the Democratic Party of Vermont. Not at all.
Could you comment on two different other issues related to climate change, the environment, and where you see Vermont's leadership in that area?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, climate change is actually one of the issues that I think a lot of people need to evolve on. I mean, a lot of folks, I think if you would go and ask people about climate change, they will say, yeah, absolutely, we need to protect the environment. But then when you say, okay, are you willing to pay, a little bit extra in taxes for it? That's where they basically go, well, no, I don't know about that. I think we need to educate people of how important that is, how it is absolutely worthwhile to pay a little bit extra taxes to bring about clean air, clean water. I mean, lake, in Chittenden County right here, we need the lake cleanup. The lake is the economic livelihood of so many folks. I mean, it just does more than enjoyment. And we need to educate people as to why it's important to do, to pay extra for lake cleanup. I know I just saw Governor Scott said he's not going to raise taxes for the lake cleanup, which I think is horrible. I think it's terrible. I think he's very short-sighted in that effect, in that issue, and we need to educate people about that. And Mary Sullivan and others who've been fighting, James Ellers, who've been fighting for the lake cleanup and environment, are great friends and supporters of mine.
Those are investments, I believe, that are both good short-term and long-term investments, whether in our environment, in Vermonters. We can look at that as investments. At the same time, people might call them a tax burden. I see them as investments in ourselves and our future.
I agree. I fully agree with you. And I think that's where I think we need to educate the people on. I think majority of the people are there that, yes, climate change, it's an issue. It's very, very bad. But where they fall off is basically saying, well, do we need to, pay extra taxes for them? And I think one of the things that the party has to do is help, you elected officials, help get that message out as you said, Mike, it is an investment, not just long-term, but short-term as well. Vermont economy, the ski industry runs on the environment. People come here for the environment, whether it's fall foliage, whether it's, skiing, maple season. I mean, that is a very important thing. An environment affects all those things.
Yeah, I can remember I spent my first 27 years in New Jersey. I still have family there. I can remember bringing my children there, and at one point driving down the road, and they said, "What is that smell?" And I said, "I'm sorry, that's New Jersey." I know there's some beautiful parts, but when the main highway is thrown through oil refineries and industrial areas, it smells. It's not what we want for Vermont. And people are saying up in the lake now, during the summer algae blooms.
Oh yeah.
It smells.
Not only it smells, I took my kids there this past summer, and as you get closer to the lake and you're trying to go in, you go, yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so at all. I mean, and parts of the lake were closed for swimming, which I think is really, really bad. Look, the Vermont economy, and even if and this is what I would say to the governor, he says, oh, we need to bring more people here. We need to increase the population. Great. If you want to do that, the best way to do that is to basically sell Vermont's quality of life, Vermont's living. That's where you attract the people from New Jersey, from Boston, from New York to say, come here. We have great schools, so you don't have to send your kids to $30,000, $40,000 private schools. We've got great public schools here. You have great housing here. You have great quality of life here. That's what we're going to sell. And I think the environment is a key component of that quality of life argument.
So we did get a question on the chat thread from Liz, and it's what are the things Vermont can do with a moderate governor and strong congressional delegation to resist the current president's action?
Well, I think Vermont's doing a couple of things. The Attorney General called the task force, immigration task force, and I was proud to chair that, or be one of the co-chairs of that. And we're going to put out a model guidelines to the cities and towns for how they can actually work on not cooperating with the federal government on enforcing immigration actions. So that's one of the things that Vermont is doing. I know you in the legislature have a bill that's going through that basically also calls for that as well.
Good news, so it just passed out of committee 11-0 today.
Oh, perfect. So I think those are the kind of things that we need to do. The problem with this president is we don't know what he's going to propose next. I mean, he's absolutely unpredictable, and he does absolutely crazy things. So we really don't know what he's going to propose next. And I think that's one of the things, there was a great example of Vermont coming together, standing up for Vermont values, whether you be Republican or whether you be Democrat. But, as much as I'd like to say that the governor is going to continue down this path, I do think that there's going to be limits. I mean, there were already folks in the House and in the Senate, I think, especially in the House, I heard, who were giving, a hard time about this bill. So it'll be interesting to see what the vote is on the House floor. But to me, this is just a non-brainer. Even if you believe that the immigration issue is correct, you certainly, to put on the Republican, fiscal responsibility thing, as they always like to say, you can't spend state resources on this kind of stuff. State resources, state law enforcement should be there. We have an opiate crisis. We have plenty of things to take care of in Vermont to focus on, immigration.
We certainly don't want to turn Vermont into a police state.
Not at all.
And if we complied with these executive orders, that's, I think, what this president is looking for.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the things we can do is provide the kind of stable leadership, working in conjunction with our Washington senators and representatives. Senator Leahy was in the building today and had a chance to talk to him, and he was very proud about the speech he made on the floor, asking Attorney General Sessions to recuse himself from any investigations of the president and his Russian connections. And I think he felt, and it seems to be falling into place, that he opened the door for others then to criticize and to hold that concern up. And in fact, Attorney General Sessions has now recused himself. I think it's that kind of Vermont leadership we want to continue to work with and provide the stability that's not coming from the White House.
Absolutely. Look, we're a border town. I mean, we need to provide that kind of stability and that kind of leadership. And, Senator Sanders has done a great job. Senator Leahy has done a great job. And, and Congressman Wells. So our federal leadership is fantastic. I think what we need to do is make sure in the state that, our governor, and this is an issue that I would say crosses party lines, that we need to make sure that we make sure that our governor stays strong on this as well.
So I think we're going to wind up in a few minutes. I had one last question for you.
Yes.
And that has to do with something that I talked about on Monday night at the Windham County meeting about the fact that There are a lot of districts around the state that that we haven't been winning in. In Franklin County, we have only 2 seats there in the entire county between the House and the Senate. Rutland County, we have only 2, I think, as well. So to me, there's several different layers to where we need to go. Certainly, we need to attract the younger, more progressive-minded generation that's coming up. But we also have to work on the people who are sort of the core voters in some of the swing districts and some of the more conservative districts in the state. And I just wonder if you could speak to, your vision for how we get to the next level, how we get a veto-proof majority in the House in the next biennium, so that if we haven't successfully knocked this governor off his perch there, that we have a little bit more leverage with him.
Absolutely. Well, again, that goes to where my point is of we need to get closer relationship with the county committees. It's going to be the Rutland County Committee and the Franklin County Committee that gets the people there, right? What we need to do is we can't just work a couple of months before the election. We have to work year round. So if I'm fortunate enough to be elected on Saturday, right from Monday, I'm going to call Ed Ballantyne, the Franklin County Chair, and Chris Larson, the Rutland County Chair, and basically start talking to them about what do we need to do to get folks more energized there. We also need to have a very clear message. Look, I'm all for getting millennials and getting young folks involved, and we think we need to. We need to tell them, look, this is your future. But I also want to work, and I also want to reach out to that single mother who's working 2 jobs and worried that she, has had to put her kid in childcare, in a childcare that she doesn't like because she can't afford to put her kid in the better childcare. But this is the best she can do to afford. We need to say why the Democratic Party speaks to that person, how we are going to help her. We also need to speak to the family, who is sitting there with a husband and wife and 2 kids who are worried about making their mortgage payments and making their bills, who are worried that I hope the car doesn't break down because that'll set us, behind. We need to tell them why the Vermont Democratic Party, why Democrats, why you guys are the folks who are looking out for them. So that's all messaging. And I want to work with Rutland. I want to work with Franklin. And we have to get the, be completely honest, we have to get the right candidate. I mean, the candidate that might work in Windham County is not going to work in Rutland. I mean, that's just, we just have to be honest about that. It's not going to work in Rutland, and it's not going to work in Franklin, and also in the Northeast Kingdom. So we need to get the right candidate who, fine, we might not be happy that there might not be 100% with you guys, but they're 80% there, they're 70% there. They're there on the issues that are the core issues of the Democratic Party, and that's what I'm going to basically work on a very granular, small level, basically getting down into the weeds, seeing who the right candidates are. And a lot of the times we've got tons of candidates. When I went to the Rutland County Committee meeting, there was a young lady who's been there all her life who said, I'd love to run, but I'm scared to run because I don't know how to raise money. I don't know how to really campaign. I just know a lot of people. I said, you know what? You make the commitment to run, we will get you the rest of the stuff from the party. We'll get you the money, and we'll get you a campaign person, and we'll get you the staff, and we'll get you the lists, and we'll teach you how to campaign. I just need your commitment that you'll be willing to do the work. So if we do those kind of things, I think we will be able to turn some of the seats around and get them back to the Democratic side. And I'll just say it up front, I don't want to do this fight of the Democrat progressive. I'm going to end that fight right away. I think it's ridiculous. I think anytime there's we go back and forth with the Democratic and progressive parties, all that sort of stuff, we need to get rid of that stuff. We just need to welcome everybody in, and it's literally, if you have a D by your name, you're a Democrat, move forward. I mean, I've talked to David Zuckerman several times and said, hey, man, you can call yourself whatever you want. To me, you're the Democratic lieutenant governor because you won the Democratic, primary, so you're it. And that's what we've got to do. So if we end that, work together, reach out the right candidates, I think we can turn around Rutland and Franklin.
Thank you so much. I will close us. Really appreciate you giving your time, and people who weren't able to get on will be given a link. Same way I distribute it through Facebook. Anybody can share the link once it's out. That will allow people to watch this half-hour or so broadcast after the fact. And again, so thank you very much for that. And one quick apology to everyone that I realized I did this on my Marlborough College class and faculty account, and that was unintentional, and I should have used my personal one, but the Marlborough College didn't endorse any aspect of this.
Right.
It shows up that way, and YouTube channel. It was just by accident, one of those foibles of trying to rush too quickly to get it set up with 3 email accounts, and I set it up with the wrong one. Anyway, thank you very much, and I will send out a link to you personally in case you want to share it, and then also on my personal Facebook account and on the Windham County Democrats Facebook account, and then anybody who wants to can share it from there.
All right. Hey, thank you very much to both of you for doing this. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Faisal.
Take care.
Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.